Welcome everyone to another session of the 17th annual Transforming the Teaching and Learning Environment. Bob Ayers, I'm your moderator. We have with us today Amar Kanakar. Did I pronounce that correctly?
Yes, that's correct.
Good. As you can see, he's professor of health education at University of Arkansas Little Rock, also known as UALR by most people. And we have Louise Lowe, who is the new director of learning initiatives at the University of Rochester Library, formerly at UALR. And we're happy to have them today talking about enhancing teaching and learning, the impact of social annotation. Let me turn it over to you.
Well, thank you so much. As you noted, I was a student success coordinator, librarian at UALR, and that's how I met Dr. Kanakar. And I'll tell you, it's been a wonderful experience getting to work with Dr. Kanakar. He is definitely an advocate for libraries and online learning and engagement. So it has been a pleasure to work with him on this project. Um, so I'll just start out with what we will do today. And what that looks like is we will explain our interest in social annotation and how that kind of came about. In doing that, we want to share some key definitions related to our research and how we frame these definitions for our research. Then we'll describe our experiences with social annotation, and we'll share our current status of our research study. Um, what we want from this more than anything is that we will go through these slides and we will talk about our experience. But whenever we give this presentation, we like to take that opportunity to engage in discussion, including brainstorming and adding your experiences. So anytime that I'm talking throughout this presentation, I encourage you to leave content or your comments in the chat. And there's going to be 3 questions that we will go over together at the end of the session, and hopefully we can collaborate on those and get more information on best practices. So this is as much as we are providing our experience, it's an opportunity for us always to get feedback from others in the profession. So that's what we will be talking about today. So why did we want to investigate the use of social annotation? So as we had the shutdown or when COVID-19 pandemic occurred, everything was moved online, and we understand that online learning will continue post-COVID. But one of the questions with that is, how do we maintain student engagement in an online environment? And how do we continue, if we're going to continue with these online programs and online learning, how do we continue to create a sense of belonging among students? And more than anything, and maybe tied to that, is how do we support active learning in online environments? So these were things that kind of what we framed and what we wanted and what we wanted to learn more about, but we also wanted to take an evidence-based practice process with this and look at it from a whole big view, but also what others were doing, but also what would that look like at our institution, because our institution had its unique challenges. So I want to just start off by telling the definition of what we use social annotation in our research. And social annotation is an interactive, collaborative process in which students engage with and annotate digital text, allowing for a collective construction of knowledge and meaning. This process involves students responding to and building upon peer annotations, enhancing understanding. And so that's one definition just to frame what we mean by social annotation. When we were approaching this project, we also wanted to talk about some learning theories and approaching from the scholarship of teaching and learning perspective. And Amar is going to talk more about those things.
Yes, so I will start discussing about this model. But before I start talking about this, I wanted to thank my colleague Louise Lowy for her kind words, and it's always great working with her, and particularly with this social annotation was something very dear to her. But what I'm going to talk about, is very much related to social annotation because here we are talking about a community of inquiry framework, which we are using in this presentation, but also in our research. It's a, a framework which it has been used a lot, particularly in online teaching and learning, because it talks a lot about interdependent elements of social, cognitive, and teaching presence. So, yeah, we are focusing on more of social annotation, but we are also trying to talk about teaching presence and cognitive presence because they kind of overlap to a certain extent. So, as you see, social presence is the ability of participants to identify with the community, communicate purposefully in a trusting environment, and develop an interpersonal relationship. So, this is more about collaborating, which social annotation does. And then there is teaching presence, is, as you see, facilitation, direction of cognitive and social processes, which is very meaningful and educationally worthwhile. And pretty much it means one necessarily doesn't have to be in the course, but there has to be some presence about the teaching or teaching aspects. And then there is the cognitive presence, which is the way the learners are able to construct and confirm meaning through sustained reflection and discourse. So, this is about meaning making, a creation of knowledge, which my colleague was talking about earlier. So, next slide. And this is a nice diagram which kind of shows how they overlap with the learning experience in the center. But you see, uh, these areas kind of overlap with each other. Okay, next one. And this is another picture which just says educational experience, but again, it shows the overlap because they are not like a distinct watertight compartments. They kind of overlap with each other. Next one. And then we in our research, the way we are conducting this study, we talk about scholarship of teaching and learning, which has different definitions. So some of what I have included here is some of the definitions. So it involves faculty in partnership with students undertaking systematic inquiry about student learning, informed by prior scholarship on teaching and learning. So that is one of the definitions of scholarship of teaching and learning. Also, it could be an inquiry focused on student learning. It has to be grounded in scholarly and local context, methodologically sound, and again with partnerships with students and going public. So here we have been working on this project for a while now, and we are going public as in this presentation. So we are trying to explain what we have been doing and what we want to do. And finally, scholarly teaching becomes scholarship of teaching when it is public, open to critique and evaluation, and made available in a form that others can build on. So that was one of the articles I had co-authored in 2015, which kind of distinguishes what is scholarly teaching versus scholarship of teaching. And this has been pretty much discussed by a lot of other definitions, where the difference is where you go public, like in this presentation, as well as you make this available so others can contribute to this and build upon this. So that is what is scholarship of teaching and learning, and uh, we are including this in our study, as well as we would like others to build upon this at some point as well. So the next slide. So here I will go back to my colleague Louise will be talking more about how we went about this research study.
Okay, so in investigating the use of social annotation, we wanted to look for evidence of how successful this could be and what success others have had. But also one of the other things we wanted to do was we wanted to incorporate not just faculty and student perceptions of the use, but also dig deeper into the student data and the pedagogical data that students that would be created through this process. So at the first level, what we wanted to do, we thought that the number of comments, views, clicks, likes, replies, or tags, that would be something that we could look at, and we thought would be easy for us to at least capture some type of student learning data at that level, and it would be something that would be achievable. But we also wanted to complement that information with the student and faculty perception survey. So we obviously we went through the IRB, and we had some challenges there, and we'll talk a little bit more about those challenges later on in the presentation. But most of those challenges came with recruitment and data collection as it pertains to working with students and student learning data, and making sure you protect privacy and making sure that they're not feeling pressured, and also that we follow FERPA guidelines. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. But this is kind of what our research study started as and what we wanted to do. We wanted student data, but we also wanted their perceptions as well. So once we understood kind of where we wanted to go, we had to think about the tool and access. And we ended up starting with something that we named Course Reading List, which is Leganto, a product from Ex Libris that's integrated with their library management system. We went with this because we had already tested it, and it was integrating with library resources. So we thought faculty would have opportunity to grab things from the library and actually use them and increase the access of content that would be affordable for students and wouldn't be adding additional costs, but also because we could authenticate students through our student information system. So there was we didn't have to create accounts for students. We didn't have to, it was already secured by our IT, and it was a product that we were already using. Now, there are other products, third-party products, and there's disadvantages to what we used and advantages to using other products. One of the limitations that we had with this system is that there were some accessibility issues with the product, and we were limited in what we could actually annotate. So for instance, even if the library had a link to that article in PDF file, so that we would have to upload it, and so you were limited basically to PDF, which we know that not all information comes in that package. So we did investigate some third-party products before we decided on that. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with some of these. There are free versions and then there's paid versions. The issue with our campus is that we didn't have an institutional-wide license to either of these. So we had to think about, okay, what if a professor wanted to use an option? Because one of the things we thought was really important is that we would want to use the Leganto course reading list that the library provided, but what if a professor wanted to use something else? So that professor should have a choice, and if they wanted to participate in our research study. So we had to develop guidelines for how this would work. And so, and then there were also the Google Docs, different types of non-specialized tools that you could use. So in all, what we had to do is consider the research and instructional needs. And that would be our advice to anyone, is to make sure that something is easy to use, because you want to minimize that learning curve so that students can actually focus on the learning and not the technology. Cost, in our case, it was a cost that a professor would have to incur if they wanted to use their own product. If they wanted to use the free version, then they have to comply and make sure that student data, their data was private and that only the students in that class had access to that information. The other concern with using separate tools is, are you going to get the data that you need for either whether it's measuring student learning or what we were asking for our research study. So those were the considerations. And I think those considerations go far beyond our research study. I think those are just best practices to think about whenever you're implementing a tool, whether it's for social annotation or not. And I kind of touched on the technical challenges of, whether something is a plug-in, integrations, and protecting privacy. One of the things that we really had to think about was how do we actually how would a faculty member grade? So it had to be so that students were identifiable, but we wouldn't be able to identify them. So there were a lot of issues that we had to work through to make sure that we were following IRB guidelines and also trying to make it easy for the faculty member and the students to actually focus on the learning. So this kind of happened a little bit afterwards. Even though we had things in place and we had all our guidelines in place, we didn't focus a lot on how to actually make it happen in practice. So we talked about the tool, we focused a lot on the tool, but some of the questions that emerged over our study is, a lot of faculty members had not used social annotation, and so they were curious about it and they were interested in participating in the research study, but we didn't anticipate having people who had not who wanted to use it but had not had any experience in organizing or structuring a class around social annotation. So it was more than just, I'm going to put up a PDF or I'm going to put up this file and then we're just going to annotate. And so we learned later on that there was actually a need outside of our research of looking at, like, how do you select the content that you're going to share and how does it align with your course or your lesson objectives or outcomes, and how would you even measure the engagement or critical thinking? So these are the type of questions that kept coming up from our faculty members. What are the ground rules for prompts and other interventions that we would use to facilitate teaching and learning? And I've organized these questions according to the community of inquiry framework. So selecting the content that's part of your teaching presence, and how are you going to make sure and facilitate that engagement, and how are you going to measure that critical thinking? So even though you put this whole picture together, these are questions that you still have to ask yourself, so that you're being very intentional about how you're designing this interaction with social and using social annotation tools. So as I mentioned earlier, we're talking about our practices. We had a lot of challenges at our institution with IRB challenges. The number one thing would be student recruitment. To do this, we had to be invited into the classroom, and we had to either go through a faculty member to get students. Actually, we had to be invited to the classroom because they didn't want to have the faculty members the students to be intimidated or feel like that they had to because the faculty member would request it. So we had to go in, get assigned to these classes, and then post the participation language. Also, how we're going to collect the student data. I think that was our biggest challenge, other than just recruitment, because students had to agree to give us that information. And so the bottom line is that those were barriers that stopped us from actually going in and collecting the student data and getting to like the real core of the likes and the mentions and the comments. We had to get away from that. And so where are we now? We're focused on student perceptions and through a faculty survey. We're also conducting a scoping review of the impact of social annotation. So while we haven't, even though that part of our research study had to be paused, we still got a lot out of it and a lot of engagement in terms of best practices and things like that. And so when we do this presentation, whether we do it at our teaching and learning events at our campus, we're always asking for feedback and gaining more information so we can add to that pool of resources. So we just keep sharing that information. So the scoping review, I want to talk a little bit about it because I think it's very interesting. we are in the middle of this right now, so you're getting the first look at what we're doing, but we're looking at the review of scholarship and teaching and learning literature for social annotation, and we're looking at it from the perspective of the United States, all English higher education, and it has to have some type of learning assessment included. And we're also ideally looking at if they apply some type of framework. We immediately noticed that the way the word social annotation was used prior to maybe to 2020 was a totally different type of meaning. And now it's more in the meaning that we're talking about in this presentation. But we also saw an increase in research during and post pandemic. So we knew that we could tell right off the bat that this is a technique that a lot of professors are using in the class. And I assume that we were going to see a lot more in the future. So we definitely saw an uptick in research after the pandemic. Like us, I think that everyone knows that more learning is going to be happening online, and they're looking for ways to provide those meaningful learning experiences. The majority of our social annotation studies that we've looked at have found positive effect on learning outcomes, although there were some that observed little to no effect. The responses to student surveys about the helpfulness of social annotation are largely positive, which I'm not surprised about that. So we're looking at not only the perceptions, but we're also looking at the data as well. So we're getting more into that. And so we also, our framework is going to be focused a little bit more on the social, on the community of inquiry framework, but we're not excluding that. We hopefully in our article that we produce is going to kind of align the frameworks that worked and which ones worked better or how they worked and for what reason. So again, the social annotation helps students in knowledge construction, literacy and reading comprehension skills. We're seeing that the annotations and responses drive interactions between the students. The teaching presence, it requires a balance between starting, answering, overseeing interactions, and allowing students' comments to drive the conversation. So we were very hopeful about what we're finding through our study. What I would like to do, and go back a little bit here, since Amar, did you have anything you wanted to add? Because I wanted.
Well, I just wanted to add a little bit about the kind of survey which we are doing
Oh,
among
yeah. Thank
faculty.
you.
Yeah, and so when we were discussing about the kind of survey we would like to do, and based on what Louise has just now said, we realized that a lot of faculty are not aware of what it means, what are social annotation tools. So though we were familiar to some extent, they were not. So we included in our questionnaire, obviously we included specific tools, third-party tools, but we also included things like discussion, blogs, because they may have used some things for social annotation, though they don't know necessarily that that is called social annotation. So they may have used some additional tools for collaboration. Like I use Google Docs in one of my undergraduate courses for student collaboration, where they can collaborate and work asynchronously. And similarly, sure there may be faculty who have used those kind of tools. So we included a wide variety of different interactive as things in the survey uh, to just see what kind of social or collaborative tools they are trying to use. And so we are in the data collection process at this point, and we have started having some responses. So we are doing that, as well as we are looking at the scoping literature review, where, as Luis said, we are looking at specific learning outcomes. So there has to be some learning outcome, could be an increase in student learning, grades, or something, which needs to be tied to use of social annotation, as well as she mentioned at the end, we will tie to at some point to the community of inquiry framework as well. What particular aspect of that ties into the literature and as well as the outcome. Yeah, that's it. Louise,
I
you can go ahead.
Yeah, I think also just I'm glad you brought that up about the survey. The other thing that we talked about in terms of getting the survey was it discipline? Like did some certain disciplines use it more than others? So we categorized those according to our schools at our college. So it was more like social science, humanities, and sciences. And we already knew that our STEM um, departments probably use social annotation more than the other departments. But I think that may have been because they knew more about the term social annotation instead of like maybe someone from the humanities who would do a lot of naturally social annotating, probably use Word docs or some other format. So like Omar said, it was very important for us to define what it was and to open it up because they were not even familiar with the word. I think just based off what we know right now, that there's two things that this is going to be something that is going to be helpful in teaching and learning and creating that sense of belonging, but also a tool on its own is not going to do that. There has to be some strategies or teaching methods that you're going to have to think through to be intentional about to getting students to talk to each other and what is it that they're reading about and so we also, like I said earlier, it wasn't just about the research outcome, but also how can we help in our teaching and learning practices by sharing our ideas. And so that's kind of where we purposely left more time at the end so that we could hear from others. I have not checked the chat box to see if the chat screen to see if there were any questions, but I wanted to give us all an opportunity here to kind of go through these questions because it's something that I do at each presentation that we give just so that we build more knowledge together. So the first question, and maybe we can take 1 or 2 minutes to think about it. And then if we have some people from the audience that want to either add something to the chat, or I think that you can speak on this, that we can allow you to talk if you want to. But maybe we could just take maybe 1 or 2 minutes to think about the first question. What should you think about when selecting content for shared reading? And this would be more about the teacher presence in turn and how you are intentionally creating that environment and what they're reading and how it's related. For example, one that we've gotten a lot is keep it short. That a long, complicated article may not be the best, but it could be if you have a different strategy. So I want to hear all comments. So let's just take it's 2:29 here, so maybe at 2:31 we can start sharing ideas.
Shy.
Okay.
Yes, so I see Louise, I see two comments. So the
Okay.
first one was content that can be interpreted in multiple ways or one that generates different opinions.
Mm,
And the second one was I'm relatively new to teaching and was given fully developed OER courses to present. Sometimes I think the readings are a bit long for the subject, but I can't change the materials just yet. And the third comment is we have a professor who is moving their entire online course into per usual. Each week is a section, and she puts all her recorded lectures, readings, and videos inside the section. Since these students previously hardly ever communicated with each other, she expected some pushback. However, most students like it and say it's better than working through everything alone
Hmm.
and posting to a discussion board. That is from Jamie.
Jamie, if you don't mind, I would love to ask you a follow-up question. Did the professor, or if it was you, I'm sorry, I didn't catch everything. What kind of prompts did, well, I guess I'm getting ahead of myself. Um, you said that the information was outlined in different modules. Can you tell me more about that?
Yeah, so in Perusal, because you can select parts within one assignment, she basically just copied over her entire module, which may have consisted each week of a recorded lecture, a reading, a video, etc. inside, and then put that inside a multi-part assignment. So she basically created 7 perusal assignments with multiple parts, and then the students have to work through it. And because Perusal's AI grading rewards students for coming back to the content more than once and actively engaging in the content, she found that the students come back and like work through it section by section rather than trying to slam through everything and then go right into their discussion post, which usually feel not cohesive.
Mhm. That's interesting because Amar, I don't think we even, at that time, we weren't even thinking about AI, were we?
No,
And
we weren't thinking, and we currently are at our institution are moving to Blackboard Ultra, which has AI built features, and they are adding more AI to the LMS. Though it this looks like Perusal was used as an LMS, almost like an LMS, because
mhm.
yeah, the Quinta course was used in that. So that's very interesting.
Yes, that was very creative. And you're like annotating the whole, throughout the whole class, the whole, every section of the class. I think that's a great and creative way of engaging students. So the whole course was the content, basically.
Yeah, she just linked it to her modules to open up the assignments. And at first, her program was a little nervous, especially putting all her eggs in one kind of technology basket.
Yeah.
It's maintained a pretty stable reputation, and the students are really enjoying it. And it's a cohort of 236 students. Um, so it was a way to get each week they work with a different group of students because of the way Perusal like does their automatic grouping. So it's a pretty interesting way to go about her online course.
So Jamie, does your institution provide a license for use of Perusal to everyone?
We provide a license for every faculty member to use Perusal and
Okay.
Hypothesis.
Oh,
Oh,
good, great,
oh,
wow.
wow.
Yeah, which we don't have at our institution, and I'm not sure if Louise has is at a different institution, and I don't know if they have licenses for all faculty for at least one of the social annotation tools. I don't know.
Yeah. I think bringing that up, Amari, is like our research created more questions, and I guess that's what it's supposed to do. But the impact will probably be more about the practices that we have on campus, but also the policies. And one of the things that I know Amar is a leader in teaching and learning on that campus, and one of the things we've talked about is, equity in terms of teaching. That one school may have the funds to purchase and provide software, and another school may not. And we thought it was important to, when we have our findings together, to present this to our leadership, to talk about the equity problem we have in terms of tools and that we use and how our institution does not purchase, as far as I know, other than Blackboard, we don't have campus-wide or institution organizational-wide licensing to these types of tools. And I think that's a especially if we are going to be having more online learning. That's a challenge for all faculty if they don't have, if everyone doesn't have equal access to that. So it was more of an equity thing that came out of this whole research as well. And so I think once we have everything, all our data collected, and we can share a story, then more than just producing a research output, I think there's an opportunity for us to help inform our campus about our policies and how they're not serving our faculty equally. And the fact that Jamie has both at her school is amazing. And again, this would relieve some of the burden of trying to organize your classes so that the privacy is maintained. If it's an institutional wide tool, it's probably already secured through the information technology support systems that we have with our institutions. Amar, did we cover all of those questions, or are we ready to go to the next?
You want to do the second one?
Okay. So the second one, and we're at I'm Eastern time, at 2:37 Eastern time.
Yeah, we have time. Yeah, we have time to.
So, let's at 2:40 my time, 1:40 your time, think about the question number 2, and then we'll come back and discuss.
How would you measure engagement? Critical thinking.
Thank you.
That's a really hard one. Yeah.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
Okay, so Carol says we incorporate reflective assignments throughout the courses I teach. How something is applied, their experiences with this or that, etc. This can be done in individual assignments or discussion board depending on the weekly material. Yes, that's a good way. Reflective assignments is one of the very good, strong ways of assessing critical thinking.
So have you done that, Amar, or can you expand on that a little bit more?
Reflective assignments?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've used reflective assignments. I teach a summer class, organization and administration and health education, where they have weekly reflection assignments. Also, I used to teach a service learning course where students had to do 3 or 4 reflections during the semester, and they were one before they actually did service learning, one when they were doing or engaged, and one after a post. So there used to be specific guidelines for that. And one can evaluate that using rubrics and all. I thought that was very I think those were really good because the students learned a lot and I could know what's happening, what kind of work they're doing, and how their thinking changed for the entire period. And it was amazing. It's just, it takes a lot of time to grade. So it's very time consuming. It depends how many reflection assignments you have. Okay, so Jamie says one of the unique ways I saw was selecting a different student each week to summarize main points. Fall, the annotations for the reading. Kicks off beginning of class discussion. That's a good idea.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think that's good that there's that inbuilt discussion which is again connected to annotations.
Mhm.
So that's another very good teaching point. Yes, and currently, particularly with the current AI age, I think everyone is looking for more and more critical thinking kind of assignments and what can be done to make things more critically, uh, more think, where students have to think more and not just use AI, or even if they use AI, how they can use it critically. And that is an emerging topic of
Mhm.
great importance.
Amar, I'm sitting here looking at our questions and I'm thinking I probably should have put number three after number two, change two and three because because I think, the third question is what are the ground rules, prompts, and other interventions that we use to facilitate student engagement with the content? In so many ways that almost tells you or how you prompt or the ground rules would dictate how you measure the engagement and the critical thinking. So in the future, I might, switch those up. So I think I don't know what our time is now. So I want to
Yeah,
make,
we just have I we have few more minutes, I
okay.
guess. We can check with Bob.
Okay, so I would say the third question are what ground rules, prompts, and other interventions that you would use to facilitate student and learning and student engagement with the content.
Yeah, so we have 7 more minutes.
Okay, so let's just take another minute and then we come back and just kind of discuss and then we can just wrap up and share any other feedback. My goal is if Bob will allow, I have a running document of ideas that we've gathered over time. And I'd love to be able to upload that with the Zoom link.
Yeah, and I'm guessing, and Bob can talk about this, but we should be able to upload that along with our presentation.
Okay.
Okay, so I teach 100% online. Carol says the engagement and interactions are completely dictated by the assignments.
Mm.
I wish I could get folks to come in for talks or meetings, but they just aren't interested. So, Carol, oh, when you said they aren't interested, is it the students or uh, the presenters are not interested?
No, the students.
Mm.
Um,
Oh, okay.
I offer regular office hours, and I'm a staff employee at the college that I also adjunct for. So they know how to find me.
Mhm.
Um, but we just can't get the students to come in. I've even asked. I've run little surveys in my classes, and they're like, "That's cool, but I have no time."
Mm.
That's why they're taking it 100% online. But
Mm.
um,
Yes, and that was my other question. When you said 100% online, uh, do you mean asynchronously or synchronously?
asynchronous.
Mm.
So they
Asynchronous,
can do it
yes.
whenever they want. As long as they turn in their work by the deadline, I don't care.
Mhm.
So,
Well, I agree, and that is what I've seen, and that's what I was. That's the probably the reason they take it asynchronously,
mhm.
and that's what it took me some time to appreciate that because that is the reason they take it asynchronously because they are really busy.
Yeah. Yeah. And we know it's a known issue. It's just my department in particular I teach in our business department. Uh, we're trialing a lot of things. So they're trying to see what they can do to increase engagement, to get that participation up. So we're using different forms of discussion board. They're having us record mini lectures, which I'm on board for. I like it. But getting them to respond is it's not working
I'd say
yet.
that challenging as well, extremely, because I tried to do group work in my undergrad asynchronous, and it is really hard because I have like different, and it's one of the reason is they, as you said, they're very busy. But the other thing is they want to use different, they don't want to use just the LMS. They may call each other, do something else, but I want them to interact using the LMS tools, which is really hard for them.
That's interesting that you say that, that the, they're not engaging in the learning management system, but
Yeah.
they have tools that they're familiar with. And I wonder if that's something that we need to consider in terms of going where the students are. I don't know. I don't know.
Uh, yeah, but that again brings the FERPA and other topics, and it
Yeah.
becomes literally little complex. And so there's we have Jamie says Bongo with peer reviews could be an interesting solution for student engagement who don't have time to all get together but still learn about their classmates.
Mhm.
Bongo with peer reviews. I don't know what that is.
Jamie, you want to talk about that before we wrap up?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a little off from social annotation, but it's basically a video assignment tool. So like if you're teaching business and they need to give presentations or something like that, have for a project where it basically does all in one tool, a screen recording and like camera and audio, and they can submit their presentation and then they have to watch X number of their peers give their presentation and either follow a rubric for grading or do like 5 stars for comments and leave comments time stamped throughout the material for their peers. It's a really good asynchronous way to like actually put a face to like your cohort or your classmates.
Mhm.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that, Jade.
I think it's also like what we're saying here is like social annotation may not be the tool has to match the learning, you know, it may not be the tool for what you're looking for. And so that's also part of designing good learning experiences. So I appreciate the fact that the peer review does sound interesting. And there are tools that do video annotations and things like that, but I'm also interested in the AI component because it seems like it provides some type of competition type thing that's going on. And I know that students are competitive in nature. So I think we've had some good discussion here and some ideas. I hope that we can all go away with and tweak in our own way. And if nothing else, we have questions that we can ponder. Um, I will try to get everything that was recorded. I hope I can capture the comments in our chat and put those all together so that we will have a reference point. And you can also see some of the comments that professors have provided in other presentations that we've given. So I hope that that would be helpful as well. Is there any final comments that you want to make, Amar?
No, no final comments, and we can. You said you have a document, and we can share that with Bob, and he should be able to upload it. For those who would be who want to continue with this discussion ahead, as well as watch the recording. And if we have this running document, we can gather more ideas through those who would be watching the recording later on. Uh, because I'm sure there'll be a lot many who would be watching the recording as well. So I think that would be really helpful.
Okay.
That I'd love to do that.
Thanks, Bob.
Well, I see we're out of time.
Yeah, we are out of time, so
It went fast.
It does go fast, too fast.